I'm on the phone sobbing hysterically, talking with my mom, and like I get pulled over. So of course, like I hang up with my mom and I'm like sobbing hysterically. And he's like, ma'am, I need you to tell me what's going on. I'm like, do you want to know really what's going on? Or do you just want me to like pretend to tell you what's going on? He's like, I really need to know what's going on. I was like, well, I'm coming back from Charlottesville. I just found out that our fertility treatments aren't going to work. And now we're going to have to do the more expensive one. And all I want to be is a mom. And I'm just like sobbing, like sobbing uncontrollably. And he's like, I'm really sorry. That really stinks. He's like, my wife and I tried for 4 years. We now have 4 children. He's like, I believe it's going to work for you. What I want you to do tonight is I want you to go get a pitcher of margaritas with some girlfriends and don't drive afterwards. But it was just like, he was so sweet. He was like, I still have to give you a ticket, but I'm not going to give you a reckless driving ticket, just a regular ticket. I was like, thank you.
They say when a baby is born, so is a mother. But while you are there to help your baby grow into the person he or she is meant to be, who is there to help you? Many women feel lost and alone when they become mothers, wondering, who am I now? Sometimes it feels like the transformation from woman to mother is as radical as a caterpillar's transformation into a butterfly. Did you know that inside the chrysalis, the caterpillar literally turns into goop before it rearranges itself into a butterfly? This podcast is about the goop, what soul transformation looks like as you transition from being a woman to a mom. Your baby's growth matters, but yours does too. You're not alone. I'm your host, Brittany Ming. Welcome to the Motherhood Metamorphosis.
Welcome everyone to this episode of the Motherhood Metamorphosis. I'm your host, Brittany Ming, and today we're talking to Jen Douglas. Jen lives in Virginia with her husband and 3 children. After 6 years of infertility and trying every other fertility treatment and not having success, they moved forward with IVF. This process has had some of the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. And I just think that's the perfect introduction to this conversation. So thank you so much for being here, Jen. I'm so excited to have you on here today.
I'm so excited too. Full disclosure, Brittany and I go way back. So,
oh yeah, I was going to bring that up. We were just talking before we started that we've known each other for like 17 years, maybe even longer. I think that
I feel like our paths had to have crossed because it was a smaller school when we were in school together.
Yeah.
But yeah, so full disclosure, we go way. We actually both had the same wedding photographer.
Yes, that's right. I was her first wedding, and then
you were her first wedding. Yep.
Yeah, so, and then we worked together on the Motherhood Collective, and you are still working with them, right?
I still am. Yep. So when was that? How many years? I was trying to think about that.
That was probably 2014. That's when I had my miscarriage. It was early 2014.
Which would have made sense. Yeah, that would have made complete sense. So yeah, which is crazy. Absolutely crazy.
Right. So they're calling it the care group now, right?
We're calling it the care group. Yep. Now, so we had some feedback, and it just, because I think, what was it originally? I don't remember. It's been the care group for so
the grief group.
The grief group. Yeah. So the care group, because it's kind of all encompassing. So the group focuses for women who, their journey to motherhood looks different than what they expected, which is kind of what this topic is. And so it's for women who are walking through infertility, miscarriage, and infant loss. And although like every story is different and like this, it's not the same, the grief that you feel with all of those things, you just unites us. And so it's just a peer-to-peer support group, a safe space to just be.
Yeah, that was such a good group. I just got so much out of it, and I just loved giving back in that way. So I'm so happy that you're still in it and doing it. So I was wondering if you could tell us about your 6 years of infertility and what it meant for you to move forward with IVF and what that journey has looked like for you.
Sure thing. I say 6 years, and actually I probably should have added 6 and now 2.5 because we're walking through secondary infertility again. We've never been able to get pregnant outside of fertility treatment. So my husband and I, we got married in 2009, and I'll still remember we were in Forest at the Good Cherry. I don't know if you remember that coffee shop. And we kind of had like the Douglas family plan where we laid out like different like ways, like, are we going to go this way or this way or this way? And of course I picked the one that had us getting pregnant right away because I'd always wanted to be a mom. As soon as I could take the babysitting class, I took the babysitting class. As soon as I could start watching kids, I watched kids. As soon as I could volunteer in the nursery, I volunteered in the nursery. And I joke that I was kind of like a professional surrogate mother because I was a nanny for, basically every summer that I could nanny for. And then I was a nanny overseas. And then after we moved back to Lynchburg, which is where we live, I became a nanny for a little girl. And then the parents had a little boy, and I was with them for a long time, 6 years.
Yeah.
A long time, 6 years. So it's all I ever wanted. In fact, when my husband and I were dating, we met on eHarmony, and he was in California and I was here in Virginia. I mean, that was one of the first things I brought up, was that I wanted kids, and I wanted 4, and I had the names all picked out, and I needed to know if any of the names were going to be a problem, because they're all family names. And he joked, because he would tell his mom he never wanted kids, but then all of a sudden he met me and now he wanted kids. And I was like, it's just because you thought I was hot. That's really the only reason why. Like, let's just be honest.
Of course it was.
So we got married, and we did this like a year. It was probably not even a year in this talk. And we decided, okay, I was having problems on birth control. And so we were like, let's just take it and see what happens. And I'd never had a regular cycle. I didn't know the term PCOS at the time, but I never had a regular cycle. And I just thought it was because I was active in sports and, these other things. So we started trying, and about a year and a half in, so about a year of trying, I brought it up with my doctor, and they decided to put me on Clomid, which is a really common first step in fertility treatments. And we did a couple rounds of Clomid. I didn't have like all the adverse reactions that a lot of people have, but it wasn't working. And so my boss at the time, her daughter and then her son, all of her children, well, her 2 were conceived through IVF because of an ectopic pregnancy, and then also in college, and she lost her ovary. So IVF was their only option to have biological children. So she was a big advocate for me going to the fertility clinic up in Charlottesville. So I immediately, like, as soon as I was like, yeah, I'm ready, I talked to the doctor, and they gave me the referral, and we went up there and we had our first consultation, and they were like, oh, it's probably PCOS. You have these markers, like, let's do the scan. Oh, you've got a great egg reserve. We're going to get you pregnant. No problem. We're going to do Clomid with progesterone and, or prednisone. So it was like Clomid with a steroid, monitor you, and, we'll do a trigger shot and we'll get you pregnant. Well, it didn't work. I didn't ovulate at all on Clomid. So this is one of my favorite stories to tell. So I'm driving back. It was a Saturday, because you have to go up for monitoring when they're open every day but Christmas and Thanksgiving, I think, because you have to monitor, cycles don't wait, So it was a Saturday, and I forget why Matt didn't go with me, my husband, but I'm driving back down, finding out it didn't work. So I knew we were going to have to do more expensive treatments. And again, my heart, we'd been in this for a year and a half at this point. And I'm driving back, and there's this one spot when you get off the highway where it goes like 55, 35, 25, 35 in like a matter of like a mile. Like, it's ridiculous. And on the phone, sobbing hysterically, talking with my mom, and like I get pulled over. So of course, like, I hang up with my mom, and I'm like sobbing hysterically. And he's like, ma'am, I need you to tell me what's going on. I'm like, do you want to know really what's going on? Or do you just want me to like pretend to tell you what's going on? He's like, I really need to know what's going on. I was like, well, I'm coming back from Charlottesville, and I just found out that our fertility treatments aren't going to work. And now we're going to have to do the more expensive one. And all I want to be is a mom. And I'm just like sobbing, like sobbing uncontrollably. And he's like, I'm really sorry. That really stinks. He's like, my wife and I tried for 4 years. We now have 4 children. He's like, I believe it's going to work for you. What I want you to do tonight is I want you to go get a pitcher of margaritas with some girlfriends, and don't drive afterwards. But it was just like, he was so sweet. He was like, I still have to give you a ticket, but I'm not going to give you a reckless driving ticket, just a regular ticket. I was like,
oh, that's the best story.
I know. It was one of those ones where I was like, just, am I going to be me? Am I just going to be honest? Like, I couldn't turn it off because I was so emotional. And he was the right police officer at the right time. But it's just, it's that realization that, again, like, your dreams slipping away, what you thought was always going to be is, again, like, there's another hurdle. There's another step you're going to have to take. And with each of those steps comes more financial investment, more emotional investment, more physical investment, more just strain on everything. It just is. So we started injections, and we did 6 rounds of injections over just over a year, because sometimes there was a break in between. So they were injections with a trigger shot. And then we did 2 without IUI and 4 with IUI, where we joked that, like, if we'd gotten pregnant on one of those, my husband wouldn't have even been in the room, because he drove up in the morning and then went to work. He did his, part. And then it takes about an hour in between his part and when they would transfer it. So like, I was then by myself. Like, so it was just like this funny thing. Like, if I get pregnant, you're not even going to be there. I'll never forget after the sixth one, sitting in with Dr. Bateman, who was this older, he's now retired around. He was like, well, by now we would have expected you to be pregnant statistically. And I just started to cry. And he was like, there are some tissues. Like, he was very just, and he was just like, how are you doing? And I think like in that, I was just tapped out. Like, I was emotionally, physically, financially, spiritually, like just all of it just done. And I needed a break. And that's when I was in group at that point. Because I think for a lot of women who walk through this, I know you'd had another woman on who went through infertility. And for her, it was a very like personal thing. She kept it close to her chest. But for me, I was drowning in it because everyone around me was having babies and my life felt like it was still at the start line. And I loved all my friends' kids. And I loved being Aunt Jen to them. And I loved the kids I watched, but it was like they weren't mine. And so I needed a support system and I needed a network of women who got it, and I think that's one of the hardest things in this is, you're going through this and people just don't get it. Like, unless you've really walked it, it's not that you can't sit with someone who's going through it, but you don't know that pain because you haven't walked it. And so it was really helpful having a group that was, a safe space to share all of that. And I'm sure, like we talked about it in there, that it was time for me to kind of take a break. And even in that break, we didn't stop trying. We didn't like go back on any birth control or anything like that. We just didn't use any fertility treatments. And I was like, okay, let's give it like 3 to 6 months, kind of like let my body just kind of like calm down. Well, through other circumstances, 3 months turned into 3 years. So we've been trying for about 2.5 years at this point, and then 3 years of not doing any fertility treatments. And so we decided to start again. We decided to start trying. And because of some life changes with my husband, we decided to try for the less expensive route and do the injections with IUI again, because I was ovulating on that. We did 2 rounds of that were unsuccessful. And that's when we decided to move forward with IVF, because at that point we'd probably spent, close to $17,000-$18,000 on fertility treatments, because because insurance in Virginia doesn't cover it. So between the drugs and between the doctor's appointments and between the IUIs and all the appointments, it was, we were in the red, with fertility. So we decided like, it's time to do this. It was an easy decision, but it also wasn't an easy decision because there's a finality too with starting IVF. You don't start with IVF unless maybe you're of a certain age. I was 31 at the time, almost 32, so it was kind of like, if this doesn't work, then that kind of shuts the door to us being able to have, I would always say, like, I want you and me to come out of me would be like my thing, like in my like emotional moments, like I want you and me to come out of me. And it wasn't that I didn't think I could love an adopted baby, because again, like I loved all of these kids that I watched and been a part of. So I knew that like that capacity was in me, but there was something about carrying and holding something that we made, that was just like this aching in my soul. So we started the process, which is, it's so clinical. All of this just takes you of any connection, any whatever, like it's just everything becomes clinical. Like we had to sign basically a document that said like what we would do with any embryos that we got. So basically like any unused ones that we decided we didn't want to use, because you want them to get as many as they can. You have to decide what you're going to do with them. And none of the options sat with me. So the night before we're going up to sign this paperwork, I'm like, I don't like any of these, Matt. Like, but what are we going to do? Because it's either use them all, but what happens if we have like 14, and I wanted 4, not 14. And they all work, so it's use them all, keep them frozen forever, which you have to pay a nice hefty freezer fee every year, donate them to science, have them destroyed, or put them up for adoption. And none of those sat well with me, none of them. And so like, I'm like scanning the internet, like what to do with your, and Matt's like reading through the paperwork and we're trying to figure this out. And I found this blog, and they decided that what they would do is like an unmedicated transfer with any leftover embryos that they had. So their body would either get pregnant or their body would just naturally
release them. Yeah.
Release them. And that sat well with me, but we had to ask them because that's not one of their options. So all of the doctors and the embryologist had to sign off on this, and they agreed to it. And so we signed the paperwork and started the process in December of 2015. I didn't have a lot of side effects. I was really lucky and I don't know whether that was just because my body was used to all the hormones, but we started the process and we had our retrieval during Winter Storm Jonas. We had to get a hotel room up there because there's no delaying this process. When they say it's go time, you have to be there. So we drove up on Friday. Matt took the day off of work. We drove up on Friday. It started to snow. The only place open in Charlottesville for us to get food. We got a huge lunch at IHOP because that was the only restaurant that was still open, and they were getting ready to close. I ran into Whole Foods and got us some food for our hotel because we knew nothing was going to be open. And we went to our hotel and we stayed at our hotel. And luckily there was a whole bunch of plow guys staying there. So we were able, it was a huge hill to get down, but the doctors and nurses stayed right at the base of where the clinic was at a hotel because they had to walk up, and we did our retrieval during a winter storm. And they were able to get 15 eggs, which is awesome. And then kind of what they do is, so we decided to do ICSI, which is where they fertilize the eggs, because I joke that my body didn't like to ovulate. And then my husband had California sperm, which were just kind of just cool hanging out.
Sperm, that's great.
Yeah. I think I always forget, there's morphology, motility, but anyways, whatever it was, they just were lazy is really just what it boils down to. I was like, can you just make them a little bit more competitive? Just a little bit. And that's just not, and if you know him, that's just not him at all anyways, which is even funnier. So we decided to do ICSI, which is where they actually fertilize each egg, opposed to just putting them in a dish and kind of letting them go for it.
Yeah.
So we had, by day 24 hours later, they look at them, and we had 12 at that point that had started to separate, and they pushed them to day 3, and they'll either use them on day 3, freeze them, or they push them to day 5. So by day 3, I think we were down to 11. And so they decided to push them to day 5 because then they've divided more. And so they can tell which ones are the healthier ones and that. And so by day 5, and they were still doing fresh transfers. And this is just so crazy to me how science just moves so fast, because when we started doing the process again, a year and a half later, they weren't doing fresh transfers anymore. They're not doing fresh transfers, but they did a fresh transfer on day 5. And we had 7 on day 5 that had continued to divide. And we decided to put 2 in because that's what my boss did. My boss had put 2 in. She had 8 total. She'd done 2 the first time that it didn't work. Her IVF transfer didn't work. And then they did 2, and they had their daughter, and then they did 2. And she got pregnant with twins and ended up only having 1. And then they did another 2 and it didn't work. So I was like, let's just do 2. That's it's not like it doubles the chances. It's just each one has the same percentage. And I forget what the percentage was. I want to say it was 40 to 60% chance of implantation. So we did 2. We had to have blood work done 10 days later. And I'll never forget, it was the longest day of my life. And I was in the pickup line to pick up the little girl from kindergarten. And she said, "You're pregnant." And I just started to sob. It was just this release of all of it. Cause I never thought I would hear those words ever.
Yeah. I remember when you told us you were pregnant, and we were all just so happy for you.
All of you, everyone was it was just because although I wasn't everywhere on social media and those type things, everyone knew what we were going through, the people who really needed to know. And so, yeah, it was this everyone, it was this cumulative rejoicing in the fact that this had finally happened for us. So I'm sobbing as I'm picking her up, and she's like, "Jenny, are you okay?" I'm like, "Yes." Anyways, it was just this disbelief for both my husband and I, because we never thought it was going to happen. Yeah. So we went 5, you go at 5 weeks, how many babies there were, and there were 2. Mm-hmm. Which I joke that we saw the 2 circles. And so we kind of knew. And then he was like, "Well, there are 2 babies." And we just watched them. And then it was a very, very, very quiet dinner at Citizen Burger afterwards. We're I don't really remember talking that much at all, because Matt's thinking how much he's going to have to pay for with 2 babies. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, my body has to carry 2 babies. So it's both of us were kind of in shock on multiple levels. It was amazing just to finally get to, have that feeling. And I remember it was the first time I got the expensive pregnancy test to pee on, because I just wanted to see the word say pregnant.
Yeah.
Because I peed on so many. I like to joke. I was like, I've peed on so many Starbucks coffees, because you buy these tests, and I'm like, I was $3. That was a waste, because you just pee on a stick, and then you have to touch chuck it in the trash. And so I got the really expensive pregnancy test and peed on it, and still just in disbelief of the whole process. And so we welcomed those babies. They were early, which was hard, having preemies. I like to say it's not fair. My body doesn't like to get pregnant and then it doesn't like to stay pregnant. I kind of developed like all of the issues, which thank you, PCOS. And so we had their twins that August of 2016, a boy and a girl. And it was the most blissful, delirious year of my life. I lived in every moment of it, because again, it was the culmination of everything I'd ever wanted in my entire life. And getting to have two, I joked that I was like, if I could have two twin pregnancies just to have two and be done, I'd be happy.
I remember you saying that.
Yeah, because I was like, I did not like being pregnant. Like the whole pregnancy, like my husband likes to say that like once they were born, he was like, oh, you're back. Like
Did that surprise you? Did you think you would love being pregnant?
I thought I would love being pregnant.
Yeah.
And I think that's like one of those things like that's not always talked about. And that's okay to say, like, you don't have to, like, every part of it may not be for you, but that doesn't mean that like you're not grateful for each part too, you know, because it's like I still was grateful to be pregnant, but I also did not like it was just not for me. But we had our twins, and when they were about probably a year and a half old, I decided, you know, we were like, let's just try this again. Like it probably won't work. We were lucky it worked the first time. So let's just get this process started again. And so we did it, and we decided to do one just because, again, we didn't want preemies again. That was a really hard experience. And so we did one and it worked again, which was just crazy, like crazy to me that like all these years of all this stuff and then it works. And just, it's not lost on me how lucky we are that that happened, you know? So it was this idea that like, oh my gosh, maybe this is just it. This is what we need to get pregnant. And so we have another son. He was full term. I still had I didn't develop preeclampsia with him, but I did develop ICP, which is a liver condition, and gestational diabetes. So he was induced at 38 weeks. We had 4 or 5 more, because we'd had the 3 that worked. And that year after that was a little crazy, you know, because the twins were only 2.5 when we had him. So
you had 3 kids under 2, like 2 and under.
3 kids. Yeah. So it was a little crazy. I don't really know what we were thinking, but again, it was my lifelong mission. This is what I do, so I can do this. And I loved it. You know, I really did. I loved it. And having one was totally, I'm sure you can say the same thing because you had twins first too. Like having one afterwards was like, oh, I'm sorry, twins. I feel like you missed out on me because this
is always one more mouth to feed and one more diaper to change and one more back to burp, and you just go on repeat all day long. Whereas with one, you're like, oh, I can just hold you. Like there's no more second baby to feed, and then you collapse on the couch.
Like I said, I've always wanted 4. So we were like, okay, I remember it was February of 2020 because it was right before the world shut down. And it was like one of the last dates my husband and I went on. And I was like, so are we ready to start this process again?
And how old was Charlie by this point?
Charlie at this point was a year.
Okay.
So he was born in January. So he was just over a year. So again, like start the process again, because that would put him at like, you know, just over 2. And I was like, you know, like it would still be crazy, but at least we're in this crazy season all at the same time. Like we're in diapers. Like you change one, you change the next, you change the next, you change, you know, like it's one of those where it's just, you still have the high chairs out, you still have the baby toys out. And my husband was like, I think we need to push it till the fall, just, you know, financially. Cause again, you still have to pay for, you know, each of the transfers and all the drugs and stuff. And so I was like, okay, you know, like bummed. And then 2020 happened.
Yeah. And I'm sure that is a story of so many women. Maybe, I mean, you had success, but I'm sure there were women who were just trying to get pregnant the first time, and 2020 just messed up all of their
all of it. I mean,
the
clinic shut down. So anyone who was in the cycle, they finished that cycle out. So like if you were in an IVF cycle, they let you finish that like retrieval, but like they didn't start seeing any new patients. They didn't do any transfers. They didn't do anything. It was literally just like wrap this group up and then we're done until we start again.
How long was that? How many months was it shut down?
I'm not sure because I wasn't in it at that point, but I know that it was going through that.
That's so hard. Talk about a deferment of your dreams. And if you're an older mom and you're like, my window is closing and closing and closing, that is so hard.
Yep. I mean, that biological clock there's so much truth to that. So we were like, okay, we'll wait for the vaccine to come out. Okay. So like we waited for that and then I got it. And then it was like, okay, like I'm going to wait a little bit longer because, you know, the COVID weight gain. I was like, let me see if I can lose some of this weight, before we like do another pregnancy. But in this time, we're not doing anything to like stop a pregnancy either, prevent it. And I was, in the back of your head, you're just kind of hoping for like that miracle, like the one that you don't have to go through IVF with. Like you never, when you're walking through infertility, I don't think you ever lose hope that like that magic's going to happen at some point. Like you're going to get to tell that story of like we stopped trying and like it just happened, or it was quarantine and it just happened. And that's not the case for everyone.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's where I say the 6 years at the front, but I really should tack on these last 2.5 years because nothing's happened in these last 2.5 years. So December of 2021, we started the process again. And this whole year has been filled with trying. We've done 2, so it takes about 3 months from start to finish because I don't get my period ever. So I have to start drugs to induce a period. And then from there, the clock starts, and it's about 7 to 8 weeks from when you get your period. And so we've done 2 transfers and both have failed. Which the first one I was kind of like, okay, like it's my time to have one not work. Like it still hurt and there were tears and there was disappointment, but I was like, it's my turn. It's my time.
So a failed IVF doesn't mean a miscarriage. It just means like you didn't get pregnant, right?
It didn't get pregnant. So it didn't implant basically, which was hard in and of itself because every other time I'd seen, because when you go into the room, they show you your embryo on a screen and it says like your name and date of birth. And then they take a picture of it and then they bring it in a long tube, basically a catheter, and they stick it in. You see it on the screen go in. You can see the little dot because you have an ultrasound on your stomach the whole time they're doing it. And every other time I'd met those babies, like when we got the picture, like I know what color eyes and what color hair and what, their personalities and if it was a boy or a girl. So
how many embryos do you have left? Are you going to keep trying?
2. Yeah, we'll keep trying until we're out, which is the hard part because again, it's like that feels very final. That was kind of where the tears have come this last week, is that like we're done when this is done. Like there's no plan B. It's like you drop thousands upon already this year, we're thousands of dollars invested in this, and that's not even with a retrieval. So, and that's why IVF again is out of reach for a lot of women. They do have payment plans, most fertility clinics, and some states cover it, which is awesome. But I joke with Matt that I'm like, I hope our kids are really smart because that was their first and second year of college just to get them here. Between
We're
IVF,
alive, but we don't have any money for your future.
Between IVF and then they're like preemie NICU stay, I'm like, I hope they've got some smarts because we're in trouble if not.
You need a scholarship or you need to be really good at sports.
Exactly. Does not look like it's gonna happen, but
So as I'm listening to you tell this story, and I walk through with you either online or in person through a lot of your story, I'm so grateful to hear it again. But tell me about what it means to be a woman walking through this fertility story that looks different than so many women who get pregnant, quote unquote, on accident, or, an oops, or things like that. How does that affect your heart as somebody who has to spend so much money and work so hard to get pregnant?
It's devastating. It's devastating. And it's not, again, that you're not happy for those people. It just hurts. It just stings, I should say. It's like salt in a wound, because like your heart is always raw and open and exposed. Like it's never not. And so it just hurts. It just, and it's ache that doesn't go away.
So even though you have conceived and you have these 3 children, like infertility still affects you. Like
it still affects me. Yeah. And it doesn't go away. And it's still like, someone in my life just got pregnant the first time they tried, and I love their child, and just told me that they got pregnant again the first time trying, and my response was not that gracious and not that graceful, but it was just like, it just hurt because we were in the middle of trying again. And I'm like, how does this happen for people? Like, I would love to just have a week of fun sex and have a baby, but I don't. I have appointments and probes and blood work and shots in my butt and suppositories and all of those fun things, which doesn't even guarantee I'm going to have a baby now, And so I think for me, it's just this, it's this dull ache that never goes away. And you think, okay, I have my 3. But again, it's my vision of motherhood looks different than what I expected. Like I've always wanted 4 and I don't know if it's going to happen,
Yeah.
and just that finality of like, maybe it will, maybe it won't is hard. There's so much infertility that is out of your control. And I think for someone who I'm a planner, I always have been. My husband jokes that we weren't even, we were dating, but we weren't engaged yet. And I like basically like laid out an entire summer, like, I'm going to start looking at dresses because we're going overseas. And like, he was like, whoa, I guess I better get on this. So I think for me, it's like, I see everyone else's lives moving forward with like their visions and their goals and their kids. And then you just feel like you're stuck again. Like, and there's nothing that you can't control anything of it. Yeah. It doesn't go away. It just doesn't. It's just this ache that, at times it's not quite as present. And other times it just feels wide open.
How have you learned to like live with that ache? Like, are there different rituals that you do? Are there different things that you reach for that comfort you, or people that you talk to? Like, how does one live with that pain that doesn't go away when it comes to this ache in motherhood?
It's a really good question. Really good question. And I don't know if there's really, feel like it's probably different for everyone. And I think that's the thing that's the hard part about this is because it's so personal, and it looks different for everyone. For me, it's again, safe people who I can be brutally honest with where I'm at. And they're not going to try to fix it or solve it or make it. I say in the care group all the time, I'm like, grief is ugly. It's uncomfortable. It's not pretty. It's messy. It's not neat. It's, you go backwards and forwards, up and down, and it's all over the place. And we don't like that as a people and as a society. We like things that are pretty and neat and it can be easily like solved and wrapped up. And here's the bow that goes on top of it. And let's put it towards the side. And I feel like so much of this, there's nothing neat, pretty, or that's solvable in it. And so it's again, to find those safe people and just, I think, to be honest with where you're at, which is I don't have to pretend to be okay when I'm not okay. And a lot of that falls on my spouse most of the time because he's my safest person, but even sometimes he's not the safest person. Like there have been plenty of times when, in this cycle, he'll say like, it's going to work this time. It's going to work this time. And I'm like, you can't tell me it's going to work this time, because you can't. And like, so I had to keep reminding him that. And so I feel like fertility, you end up shouldering yourself, even if you're the most honest person with it, because it is so personal. And it's this longing that you have, that's at the core of who you are, that it becomes a very personal, which can make it very lonely and isolating, even if you have those people in your life. So it's, again, finding safe people, being real with who you are, and just, yeah, I think that's kind of the main things, but until I feel like you're done, whatever that looks like, I don't know if it ever goes away or if it ever goes away. I don't know if, if this doesn't work, if that feeling of completion will ever be there for me,
Yeah, I think about, my own motherhood story has been different, but I think that there's such this theme when I talk to women, either on the podcast or in other situations where motherhood looks different than I thought it was going to be. Like that's a narrative that we tell ourselves or that we tell others. And I think that there is grief in that adjustment. It's so different than you think it's going to be. I think coming to terms with how is motherhood shaping me and accepting, I think is sometimes the toughest road that we can be on, because like accepting that hard place that this is my story and it's not the story that I built in my head before I became a mom. Man, I think that's just sometimes the hardest part, is
Yeah.
reconciling those two stories.
Yeah. Yes. A million times. Yes.
Yeah. And I think that's a burden in motherhood that is sometimes so hard to verbalize, because we might think, but I have this family now, or I have the pregnancy, or I have this. Like, why is the ache still there? Why am I sad? Why? And do I feel that sting when I hear about this other woman's story, or when I talk to my sister, or whatever it may be? I think that it's so hard to tease out those emotions and be like, okay, this is why. And I'm still growing and I'm still trying to accept, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's the thing about grief, is that like, you're never really, there's this myth that like, if you work through the steps or if you do this, like you'll get there. Like,
Yeah.
and You don't. It's always there, whether or not you're in a healthy place or an unhealthy place. Yes, you have some control over that, but like, you're not like, it's not a box you can just check and be done with. And again, with IVF, especially, it's like, by the time you've gotten to this, you're so far down the rabbit hole of grief and longing and just desire to be a mom that like, and I think I wrestled some with that, like, especially in the care group, after I had the twins, especially, it was like this, like reconciling the two, where it's like, my identity for so long has been infertile. And that's what I've been known as, is like, an advocate for awareness of infertility. And all of a sudden now I have these, but like, how do I, like, that person's still there. Like, she's still a part of me, even though now I have these children. And I think like, that's kind of like coming back up now with 2.5 years of secondary infertility. And now 2 failed IVF cycles, is like the fact that like, yeah, she's always been there. Like, she hasn't gone away just because like I have these children. It's just, that grief was lower for a little while, but now it's like the feelings of failure and the feelings of like, my body's not doing what it was designed to do, created to do. And yeah. And again, like you said, like seeing other people around who have no problem, is hard. So it's again, it's reconciling those two. And I don't know if there's a way. I always say like, my head knows these things, but connecting it to my heart, there's like this huge gap between the two. Like, I can tell you all the right things. Like, I know what the right answers are. And I know like what I should be feeling in this moment or how I should be responding, but like connecting it to my heart, there's this huge gap between the two.
Yeah.
And I don't always know how to connect those. It's not always, connected. So
It's that big both and that's
yes.
so prevalent in motherhood. It's like, I'm both grateful for these children and I'm grieving over how difficult this
Yes.
shitty path has been. Like,
Yes.
it's
If I've learned
so
anything
hard.
in the pandemic and over, I would say again, like parenthood, it's that the two things can be true at the same time. And again, it's not something that I was ever allowed to feel. I feel like I always had to be like, well, it's this one thing, and you figure out this one thing. And it's like, no, it can be like multiple things at one time that are all true and affect you in different ways.
Yeah. Man, if that isn't like motherhood encompassed,
Yes.
because we've got the pride of seeing them grow up, but also like the struggle of the stage that they're in. And then like the worry and the happiness and the hugs and like the arguments and like feeling it all
Yes. At the same time.
at the same time. It's that huge both and.
Yes.
And I think that's the path that can help us walk towards that transformation where we're not like in the goop anymore, where you're not feeling so unconnected to who you want to be, where you're just in that transition. I think that saying both and, I can feel all of these things can help us walk towards transformation. It doesn't actually transform us, unfortunately, but I think it
No, but
helps us walk towards that path.
it's the honesty in that, which was what helps get out of the goop and helps build yourself back, because it's like, it's allowing yourself to feel those things, which you need to, because that's being honest with yourself and others and life and your children and your spouse and all those things. And that is the pieces that start to build it. It's not that like one will solve it. It's those are all the blocks that need to come together to make this messy life.
That's really good. I like that. So what would you tell another woman? I'm sure you have told women in the grief group or other women who they're like, I want to be a mom so bad and everything I've tried has not worked. We've gone the road and we're looking at IVF. What do you think that you would tell her if you were going to hold her hands and look in her eyes?
I'm so sorry. I am so sorry you are here, because it is the club that no one wants to be a part of. It's painful, and I'm so sorry that you have done all that you've done, and you are now having to make these big decisions that just feel like you're being just picked apart even more. And then again, like, it may not be for you. And that's something that you have, like, again, it's not for everyone. It's whether it's just financially, it's not for everyone, which is devastating in that you get to this part and you have to decide like what's in your bank account if you're able to, but also it's not for everyone because again, it's more invasive. It can be final, which can feel really scary, but also
You
a lot of
may like feel uncomfortable making those like moral decisions about
moral
what to do with
decisions.
your embryos. Yeah.
Yep. but there's a lot of beauty that can come out of it too. And I kind of said, when I was sharing our story, like for me, it was like, I needed to close every door possible. It's not that I couldn't love a child that was like, that we brought in that wasn't our biological child, but I needed to close every door knowing that we had tried everything before we moved forward with that. And so for me, that was personally, but I think again, so much of like, especially in our care group, what we say is like, it's not about offering solutions. Like I can't tell you to do IVF. It's a personal decision that you have to make. I can support you in it. You can find other people to support you in it, those safe people, but it's something that you have to decide, which again, can make you feel even more like an island in it, because it's not, the doctors can't tell you, like they can recommend it, but they can't make you do it, and I think that's the hard part is like, even in that, it can feel very isolating. But I feel like with IVF, that's a lot of things. You hear all the horror stories about these women who have had these horrible experiences in it. And for me, it wasn't like it was hard driving up there every day to Charlottesville. I don't know how far away some of your clinics will be. It may be that you have to stay there for a week when they're monitoring you every day, which can be hard. But like, it doesn't have to be horrible too. Like if you kind of embrace it, like there can be like this beauty and there's peace that kind of comes in it too. And I think when we finally made the decision to walk through it, it was like, okay, like we're in this now. And there was this calm that came, kind of in the chaos of infertility. Like, this is what we're doing now. So I think, again, it's like, I'm so sorry that you're here because it sucks and it's not fair and it's not okay. And it's not, but you don't have to be alone in this either. So much of parenting in general is taking a giant leap off of, this like 50 billion foot diving board into like the blackness of like the unknown. And that's infertility, and so it's kind of like, it's another leap and it sucks that you have to take it, but it's not a guarantee. I think that's what I've realized now is it's not a guarantee that you're going to get pregnant, and it's like, you've done it all. So what will it hurt to try this?
Thank you so much for sharing that. I loved hearing your story again. I love celebrating with you and grieving with you through this process. And I'm just really thankful that you came on today. I like to end our interviews with these fun rapid fire questions. So are you ready for this?
Let's do it. Okay.
Right. Which Disney princess would you like to take out to coffee?
Okay. So mine is a 3-part one, because I would like to take out the Madrigal sisters from Encanto, because I feel like each of them has a little bit of me in them. And I'd like to, so like the 3 of them be like,
that's a party. I love that. Yeah, you need to have the whole coffee party at the, take over Starbucks.
Exactly.
Yeah. Would you rather spend a weekend at a cabin in the woods or in the city with great restaurants?
City with great restaurants.
An ordinary moment that brings you great joy?
Just being together with my family.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Last show you binged and loved?
Big Love. I just finished that. I was kind of going down that path for a while, watching some documentaries and then jumped off that. But we're almost done with Stranger Things. I can't get enough. I'm not a sci-fi person, but that show, oh my gosh, it's just brilliant. So we have an hour left in this last season and I'm dying because.
Oh, that's exciting. Are you going to finish it tonight?
No, because my husband's isolating because he's the only healthy one in the family. So we will see when we're going to finish that.
You're like, I'm holding out. I'm holding out. Things. Yeah. Go-to book, fiction or nonfiction?
Right now, it has been nonfiction.
When you were 5 years old, what did you want to be when you grew up?
A mom.
What are you looking forward to?
I think I'm looking forward to just seeing like this next year, the twins will be entering into kindergarten and just seeing, I'm scared, because it's like a new school and all that stuff, but I'm also excited to see how they're going to grow and blossom in like this next phase of their life. So I'm excited for that.
That's exciting and scary. I hear you and all that.
Yeah.
All right, last one. Finish the sentence. Motherhood is
everything.
I hear you on that. Well, Jen, thanks so much for being here today. I'm so thankful to talk to you and hear your story, and I can't wait to share this with everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Motherhood Metamorphosis. If you've enjoyed this episode, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe to this channel so you never miss an episode. Next, tell your friends. Podcasts are a slow growth type of social media, so promo works best when it's from person to person. If you know another mom who's in the goop right now, send her a text of encouragement and the link to the episode that is speaking to your heart right now. If you have a story about your own matrescence, the physical, emotional, hormonal, and social transition that occurs when someone becomes a mother, please leave a comment below. I want this channel to be a place where women can build community about the challenges and joys of their own motherhood metamorphosis. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope it encouraged you and gave you some good food for thought. If you ever have any questions, comments, or you'd like to reach out to me personally, you can email me at brittanyaming@gmail.com.
In fact, I think my mom gave me multiple talks really close together because I thought you had to have the chicken pox to get pregnant.
That's so
Well,
crazy.
I was like, at like 7 or 8 years old, I was like, I'm good. Like, I got the chicken pox. We can, and so again, I was like, later on, we probably had the talk again and, realized that, but I really remembered like being like, I'm good. I got the chicken pox.